I'm Emily P. Freeman, and welcome to The Next Right Thing. You're listening to episode 378. This is a podcast about making decisions, but also about making a life. If you struggle with decision fatigue, chronic hesitation, or if you just need a few minutes away from the constant stream of information and the sometimes delightful but distracting hum of entertainment, you're in the right place for discerning your next right thing. I'm an author, a spiritual director, and an occasional workshop leader. I live in North Carolina with my family, and through my work, I've helped thousands of spiritually thoughtful people overcome decision fatigue so that they can discern their next right thing in faith, work, and life. Today, I'm glad to welcome poet, writer, and visual artist David Gate. Originally from London, David now resides in my own home state of North Carolina in Asheville, tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains. His work centers around care for the individual and the nurture of community, including culture, the earth and the environment, the dignity of others, and spiritual communities. He says the most important thing is for us to care for the world, ourselves, and each other, and all of his work points in that direction. In this, his debut collection of poems and essays, A Rebellion of Care, he inspires us to rally for what makes life worth living. Listen in. David Gate, welcome to The Next Right Thing.
Thank you for having me, Emily. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Well, and speaking of where you are, I know you live in Asheville, North Carolina. I live
Yes.
3 hours from Asheville in Greensboro. I just wanted to take a minute here at the top to kind of reflect back. My daughter was in school in Boone when Hurricane Helene hit last year. I know that you live there in the mountains, right, where it kind of was the center of a lot of the
hmm
damage. Is there anything you want to share 1 year later from the ground from where you are? How's your community doing?
The community itself has really bounced back, and it was devastating. We lost so much. We, on a personal level, we lost favorite places and businesses and restaurants and coffee shops and just communal spaces where you go and be with your community, and so many of those favorite spaces have gone. But I feel that it really did reveal this level, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, when we talk about the book, but this level of care that people are just very willing to give to each other in moments of crisis. And it was really beautiful to watch neighbors not just have cursory, oh, are you okay, but like actually meeting each other's needs, actually helping each other out, actually um, providing and sharing and giving in beautiful ways. And so that it in a time where there's not much to restore your faith in humanity, that was something that really did, and really made me think, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
Mm,
We're going to look after each other. Yeah.
wow. That's a profound thing to be able to take from an experience like that, to be able to say, we're going to be all right.
hmm
Well, I want to start, on a podcast that centers around the decisions that we make and the motivations behind them, the next right thing. I'm
hmm
curious about your decision to start posting your poetry on Instagram back in 2021. Was it the desire to challenge yourself creatively that compelled you to make that decision? Was there more to it than that at the time?
Um, it really came from. So I just turned 40, and I had we'd gone through the initial stages of COVID, and the lockdowns and so forth, and I just started a new job, and not my dream job. It was something to pay the bills, and um, and I remember thinking to myself, if I do not have a creative outlet, I'm going to go insane. Like, I'm going to, like, everything that's inside of me that I want to say, and everything that's inside of me that I want to express, and everything, you know, that wants to make and have something, see something beautiful in the world, is really just going to be pent up, and it's gonna do me damage. And so it was really a form of survival, I think, just to say to myself, I'm going to do this. And I didn't really know that it was a thing to post poetry on Instagram. Like I really didn't have another place to put it. Like it was, the idea of putting it on Facebook was even worse. And so it was Instagram or nothing. And so I mean, that was just what I had, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I had things that I wanted to share. And I'd been a songwriter for many years, and so I was used to the kind of process of sharing, and knew that was what was in me that needed to get out. So I just did it and just started doing it. And I started with these Enneagram Beatitudes, because there's 9 of them, and so I knew that I would have to do 9. Like I was doing one a week, so I knew I'd get 2 months in, before giving up. So um, yeah, that's how I started.
Now, in the process there, was there ever a time when, you said, I had no idea what I was doing, but was there ever a time when something shifted and you're like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing"? And if so, what was that moment or series of moments?
Um, it was really in relationship with what became my audience, or the people, my readers. And so it was at that point where I realized that, oh, this isn't just about me. Like, this is having
Mm,
an effect. And um and then seeing that, recognizing it, being okay with that as well. Like, because there's this like pure artist thing that I have, where it's like, I'm just going to share my truth and whatever. And but the reality is that you end up in a relationship with those who are participating with your work. And then that shapes it, like that, how that you learn about yourself through how others perceive your work, and how others, it changes them, and so forth. And yeah, that was when I really began to realize that, oh, this is having a bigger impact than I imagined.
yeah.
And I think it was understanding that, and then embracing it, and thinking, actually, I like that, and I want that, and this is good. I'm glad I'm doing this. And
Mm.
yeah, and then trying to do it better.
Yeah, I'm sure that you go through that, like, "I'm glad I'm doing this," and also, "I wanna shut it all down and quit this
Oh
minute." Like,
yeah, that
I
that
hope that
first
you
year
have those same
especially.
feelings,
Yeah, that first year
'cause I do.
especially. Yeah, I wanted to shut it down pretty much every week. Like, what am I doing? Why, like, why am I posting these things? And some of them weren't great, and so forth. And you know, but there's just no way of becoming um an artist, but especially a writer, without putting it out into the world. You can't.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
It's like the good news and the bad news all mixed in one.
Yeah, and as an
Well,
Enneagram 4, it's like you want to be seen and you want to be known, but that's literally the worst thing as well.
it's the worst thing. It's the absolute worst and the best and the worst. Well, you write about this a lot, and I know that we are all likely aware of a chasm that exists between the world where we live in now and the world that we wish existed or the one that we're working to create. And so I would love to hear you talk about if despair is one side of that chasm and positivity is on the other side, or um, maybe even not positivity, but if hope or some way we want something to be
Mm.
is there. What would you say is the bridge?
Um, you can't let go of either, right? So it's you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to ignore everything that is causing despair." Like, you can't ignore climate crisis, right? You just can't wellness your way through that. Like it's not going to bring the temperature down. It's not going to stop your city getting hit by a hurricane, right? Like, so you can't pretend, right? You also can't fall totally into despair and cynicism as a place you live. And I think, um, so the bridge between the two, I think, is the truth. The truth is, um, things are terrible, but we're going to be okay, and we're going to get through, and we can make things better. And it does feel very difficult and very impossible a lot of the time when um, you think about everything that needs to happen in order for our society to improve. But also, things happen fast when, they happen slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly, and in very small ways, but then often they they um they go fast towards the end. So this is we see that in human history. And I think the truth is the thing that you have to keep them both. You have to hold them both, and that's the truth of it.
Mm. In your work, this idea of care, this action of care takes on kind of a radical quality. How do you define care beyond sentimentality or like just a duty? And what makes it kind of revolutionary in this cultural moment?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm really trying to combat in the book is um, our sense of isolation and individualism.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to restore a communal sense of being. And um, and I think that that's what we, even with all the individualization that we've been through, like a communal sense of being is what we believe in. Like, and most of us would say that other people are really important. It's, that care is important, that looking after each other is important, that compassion is important, that empathy is important, not a sin. And so it's, I think we agree with that stuff. Like, that's something that most of us agree on, like, regardless of your political spectrum and upbringing. These are very, very basic, very simple things about being human. And but we've put ourselves and have been placed in these little silos that really isolate us from one another. And so much about the book is about restoring this communal sense of being. But to me, that it doesn't mean that we suddenly shift from, like, oh, well, don't care about the self-care things, only care about community, don't care about wellness, and you just abandon that stuff. I don't think that that's the solution, is to, like, work harder and be better. I think the solution is to integrate that stuff, and so to integrate elements of self-care, particularly towards the body and mind and spirit, um, into an overall practice of care, and understanding that looking after yourself can be a playground for discovering how to look after others. And if you view it that way, and not just like the end goal is for my mood to improve, or the end goal is for my life to improve, but is actually a curiosity about yourself that you then can apply to other people, I think that's how we should approach it.
Mm. I have to tell you, David, the wildest thing while I was preparing for this episode, I could not find your book. Like, I could not find the physical book. I'm looking in my office, I'm looking in my bedside I'm looking everywhere. I couldn't find it. And I was so frustrated because I'm like, I need this book to prepare for this conversation. I want to look back over it, all the things. And then I remembered that our mutual friend Kendra Adachi, she
Hmm.
lives down the street from me,
Yeah.
around the corner. And I'm like, oh, Kendra probably has a copy of David's book. Like she probably has multiple copies, which she did. She has like 6 copies because that's what she does. She
God bless
buys
her.
multiple copies of books
Yeah.
of friends, right? And I'm like, "Oh, so I text her. I'm like, "Kendra, do you have a copy of David's book?" Well, she's like, "Oh yeah, totally." I'm like, "I'm on my way to get it." So I get in my car that I own in my little neighborhood, drive the literal 3 minutes, and I'm like self-reflecting, realizing I'm so angry at myself that I can't find this book. And I'm like, I can't believe it. And I'm going through this whole thing. And then I have this moment of like, meta, like realization of how the sheer offensiveness of having to need my
Mm,
neighbor
mm,
in this tiny little thing, like this the luxury that we both own the book, have it on our own bookshelves, like aren't you glad that everybody buys it? But also in some ways it's like we could just like share these
yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But so by the time I got to her house, thankfully it didn't take that long. I was so grateful, almost to the point of like, I mean, I didn't cry. I've been known to cry about smaller things, but like I was like a little bit tender about how grateful I was that I could text my friend. When I pulled up to the house, she was sitting on her porch, your book in her hand, walked it to my car, ready to deliver it. And I just thought, what an embodied way to experience really the very thing that a rebellion of care is in some ways about. And it's not about me and getting my own needs met, but like this communal reality of
Yeah.
what if we actually depended on each other in a way that I'm the one who's needy and not always the one who's the hero showing up to save the day.
Mhm.
It was a really, like I said, it was embodied, an embodiment in its smallest way of what I think you're talking about.
Absolutely. And the hardest part about a communal way of being is not necessarily, oh, I'm going to meet everybody else's needs. It's about being vulnerable enough to admit your own and
Yes.
allow other people to come in and care for you. That for most people, that's actually harder
Yeah.
than helping others. Yeah.
And you might not have an answer to this because you're not a self-help writer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So bear with me. But are there ways that you recommend we can begin to root out this deep offense that sometimes arises when we feel needy or incompetent or unprepared or vulnerable?
I think it's a physiological response. That's how I experience it. So I experience it as something that happens in my body of like I and maybe I may I think anecdotally men suffer from this even more because it's like humiliating and really one of the only things that affects men in our world is humiliation. And so like we are humiliated, we feel humiliated, we feel so small and weak and terrible, and it is a physiological reaction. Like I have to not feel like that, and I guess it's an evolutionary thing of it's my body trying to protect me, right? It's my body trying to you know not get eaten by a tiger. And so that's what's happening. And you know realizing that this is actually, I think the real realization is that I am far more vulnerable when I am alone and isolated
Mm,
than I ever am in any danger, right? So the real danger is isolation. Like that is not, it's not being vulnerable, being weak, being seen as small. Like the real danger that we are in our society is our isolation and our individualism. The pack can be where we feel safe.
yeah, that's good. See, that's good. That's good. You did it. You
Okay,
answered my
good.
question.
Maybe I could have a little self-help sideline.
Maybe you do. Just a little side
Yeah,
hustle over there,
yeah, a little,
self-helping.
little
That's
grift.
on brand for you, I think. I'm curious in what ways is the actual, because we talked about writing a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
In what ways, if any, is the act of writing as itself a form of care?
I think it's I equate the two all the time, because I think if you learn how to pay attention to something that you want to say or express, and this is really in any art form, it could be dancing, could be pottery, could be anything. Like, there's something you want to make, something you want to express, something you want to put into the world, something beautiful you want to share, that if you pay attention to that impulse, and then you go through the processes of making that happen, and then you see the thing that you've created, and then, in my case it's most often like a poem, and then you look at that poem and you think, well, actually I need to take a little bit away from that, or I need to add a little bit here, I need to just change that, I need to make it clearer, and you kind of give it what it needs. So you're working with it, and often, and you'll know this as a writer, you're kind of discovering what it is that you wanted to say as you're writing. Like, it's not like you have this
Mhm.
fully formed thing in your head that start to finish, and sometimes you start and you're discovering something, and that all those things are exactly the processes that you need to care for people, and to care for someone else, is that you're discovering, you don't know who this person is, you don't know everything they need, you don't know their entire history, and you're discovering things about them. And even, you'd think that, like, I would know my children because I've been there for pretty much every moment, that they've been alive. But, like, you don't, you're discovering your children, like, who they are and what they need, and this one needs something totally different to this one, and it's the same with poems. This poem needs editing and stripping down, and this one needs adding, and, like, you're just, I think that it art itself, and the creation of art is an act of care. It's an act of care to self, to the very thing that's inside of you, but it's also learning the processes of looking after another person.
Yeah, you're talking about transferable skills,
Hmm.
which is such a beautiful way to talk about art and kind of how that shows up in the daily monotonous rhythms of life. I'm curious, caring can be exhausting. uh, and I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how to practice care when it's most difficult. I know that you you live in such a way that the work that you do provokes, as all
Hmm.
good art does. What does it look like to practice care towards those who disagree, or even in systems that actively resist tenderness?
Um, wow. I th- I feel that it has to be a non-negotiable f- value for you. And it is not, care is not just like a nice idea or a preferred way of being and existing. It is, for me, a, an absolute core value. So when I am not acting in that manner, I do not feel myself. I do not feel connected to that which I think is most important in the world. And it, there are philosophical reasons for that. There are religious reasons for that. But as I'm sure you're aware, I can have exactly the same kind of doctrinal beliefs as my neighbor, and perhaps they don't end up caring. So it's not just about, like, where I come from. It's not just about the kind of values I was given as a child. It's not about my religious or philosophical beliefs. There's a thing inside of me that
Mm,
that it's just a value. It's a
yeah.
value that's so linked to who I am, um, that that is what sustains it. That's what makes me do it time and time again. That's what you know helps keep me going doing it when I'm tired, and I'm this world just seems like you're never going to change it, and so forth. It's really that value inside of me. Is like, I don't really know another way of being that would satisfy that in me, that value. And so I have to do it, and I have to keep going. um and of course, like, you can be exhausted, particularly if you have young kids, and so forth. Like, you know sometimes you do just have to think, okay, well, caring for me is the most important thing I have to do right now, and in order that I can keep going and not, collapse. And you still have to pay attention to yourself, and still have to pay attention to
Yeah.
what you need. But really, it is that, what else am I going to do? Fall into
Mm.
despair, um, give up? I don't think I could. So yeah,
Mm.
it's that connection, and having that connection to the value. It's not just recognizing it, it's being connected to that value and saying, I have to do it this way. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be myself.
And that is such a testimony, such a I guess that's the word I could use, to knowing and naming what your core values are. Not just naming them, but naming them. Like, it has to start there. I think so many of us walk around, everybody has them, but if they're unnamed or unrecognized, it can be, we don't have a filter through which to see our decisions, our life, our kind of how we are showing up in the world and why it matters so deeply to us. So I love that kind of explanation for why care. Well, in some ways, you're saying, what else do I have? What
Yeah.
other option is there but to be myself in this way? There's a section in your book called Friendship Will Save Us with two poems that I think may have led me to you initially, or at least I saw them shared a lot. You probably know the ones. One was Like Every Selfie, and the
Mhm,
other was Never Stop Spamming the Timeline. And
mhm,
I saw these shared and reshared. They still have their moments where they come back around and people share and
mhm.
reshare them. Why do you think these have such resonance?
um, because well, my big take on this is that we are, for many of us, where, and I talk about this in the introduction to the book, where our our political moorings have disappeared, and our religious moorings have disappeared, and we feel at sea. And so when we come
Mm,
across something that expresses a value, a true, in the depth of our soul value, we latch onto it. And so I think what people get about those poems, and that chapter in particular, and really the friendship poems are the big doorway for people into my work, and then they discover the things that aren't so, pleasant, and so, and
yeah.
hopefully they stick around. But
Yeah.
um but I think it really resonates to a core value that people have about friendship, and about the value of that. And I try not to make these pieces too soppy or sentimental. I try to keep them grounded in our daily lives, like,
Mm,
not, never stop spamming the timeline. It also speaks to this worry we have that, oh, I'm posting too much about my, baby, and I'm posting too much about my life, and it's from the other side saying, no, I want to see your life, I love you, and I want to be connected to you. So I
mm,
think it plays on little worries we have as well, and you know that's what the work does. um, but I think it resonates to
yeah.
something deep in us. Yeah.
Mm. David, it's been a few months now since A Rebellion of Care released, and I'm often talking with authors either before their book releases or the
Mhm.
week of, and so we have a little bit of benefit of time having passed.
Yeah.
What has been surprising on this side of writing a book, of sharing your work? Is there anything people are getting wrong about your work or the intentions behind it, or something that you've been thrilled about?
um, I've really been thrilled about how people have um, approached it i- in a almost like a devotional way. So, like, a lot of people have commented about how they'll read just one or two poems a day, and they, they're not just like racing through the whole book. And there are people who are like, oh, I read it in a day. And it's not, they're poems, so they're not that long, so you can do that. But just how people are savoring it and uh, enveloping it into their life practices and their own self-care practices, like, is really beautiful. Like, for me, that really speaks to people getting what I'm going for, in terms of the theme of the book and how it's put together. Um, and so, yeah, that feels really special to me, because then I feel like I get to be part of people's lives over an extended period of time. My work gets to be in every day of people's lives over months, rather than, oh yeah, I raced through this book and now what's the next book. It's that's special. That feels
Mm.
like I feel very privileged to be part of people's lives in that way.
Mm. You write poetry for the kind of world you want to live in. What kind of world is that?
um yeah, for me it's communal, and the understanding that we are all deeply connected, that each of us are in these incredibly beautiful, unique, special, weird creatures, and that uniqueness is to be cherished and encouraged and nurtured. And so, really, a nurturing society and a nurturing um, community is what I want to see and develop and grow, and that
Mm.
rather than outcome orientated. So that rather than, like, we're going to take over the world and build the biggest things ever and um, create things that last for a million years. No, I just want to nurture these little plants that need sun
Mm.
and water and rest.
Beautiful. Well, before I have you read us out, I always like to ask every guest that comes on, what is your next right thing?
My next right thing is to return to the work. So this period of finishing a book and everything that goes into its release and everything that goes into sharing it in the world, and right now I'm just starting a little tour. I'm visiting a few places and getting to meet people and sharing about the book, like that. This is all really brilliant and exciting and beautiful and what I want to do, but like I just feel this um, pull to return to um, my little house in the mountains and um, write again. And so, really, the next right thing for me is to write, but what I'm gonna write, that's still in the air. That's still
Yeah, to be discovered.
yeah, to be discovered. Like, I have lots of ideas, but, like, yeah, I'll only find it out once I start.
Beautiful. Well, we can't wait. We
Mm.
can't wait to read what you choose to share. Well, thank you, David, for joining us today. And I would love it if you would close us out by reading one of your poems, We Are Born Telling the Truth.
Yeah. This is in the first chapter of the book, and it's called We Are Born Telling the Truth. We are born telling the truth, making cries for our needs. But soon enough, we are taught to stop speaking unless it is urgent. That silence is a lie. We shroud ourselves in independence to hide the helplessness. Yet the truth never changes. I need you.
Thank you, David. Thanks for listening to episode 378 of The Next Right Thing. I hope this simple practice of caring for one another as an act of rebellion can be just one more rung on the trellis upon which your rhythm of life can continue to grow. Because while it's true, this is a podcast about making decisions, the bigger truth is that our daily decisions are making our lives. You can find David on Instagram at DavidGatePoet or online at davidgatepoet.com, where you can also find his hand-typed poems, prints, stickers, and his new book, A Rebellion of Care. As always, you can find me online at emilypfreeman.com and on Instagram at Emily P. Freeman. This episode was edited by the team at Unmutable and organized by Ashley Sherlock. In closing, here are a few words from David Gate in his poem called Never Stop Spamming the Timeline. Never stop spamming the timeline with all the things that you love. If you live in a beautiful place, show me. If you are in love, show me. If you ate something delicious, I want to see, though I may not skip through the 207th baby pic. By God, still post them. Your art, your music, your kitchen designs, the books you have read, your poems that don't rhyme. Fill this life with all you love and share the joy with me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.